Hi, everyone. Welcome to Cozy Corner Chronicles. My name is Julia.
And I'm Liz.
And if you guys did not already know, May is AAPI month, which stands for Asian American Pacific Islander month. So, for people like me and Liz, basically, it's our month.
Our month to shine. So I have some history about AAPI month. Um, Obviously, it's the month of May, and it's a celebration of Asians and Pacific Islanders in the United States. Um, it's pretty a broad term where Asian Pacific kind of encompasses all of the whole Asian continent and the Pacific Islands of um, Melanesia. I think that's how you say it. Micronesia, and Polynesia. And so, like most commemorative months, it originated with Congress in 1977. Frank Horton, I actually didn't know all of this until today when I gave my kids this whole spiel.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Frank Horton, who of New York, introduced House Joint Resolution 540 to proclaim the first 10 days of May as Pacific Asian American Heritage Week. In the same year, there's a senator named Daniel. I really don't want to butcher this. I think it's Anuye, introduced a similar resolution called Senate Joint Resolution 72, and neither of these passed. So in June
Mm.
of 1978, Horton introduced House Joint Resolution 1007, and this resolution proposed that the president should proclaim a week, which is to include the 7th and 10th of the month during the first 10 days of May, in May of 1979, as the Heritage Week. And then the joint resolution was passed by the House, then the Senate, and was signed by President Jimmy Carter on October 5th, 1978, which became law. And then the law amended to the original language of the bill and directed the president to issue a proclamation for the 7-day period beginning on May 4th, 1979, as the Asian Pacific American Heritage Week. And then during the next decade, presidents passed annual proclamations for this Heritage Week until 1990, which is when Congress passed Public Law 108 283, which expanded the observance to a month for 1990. Then in 1992, Congress passed a public law called 102 450, which annually designated May as AAPI Heritage Month.
So here we are, guys. It was a long road, and here we are where we get a whole month.
Yes. And we are so excited to share our backgrounds. I don't think we've actually ever really talked about it.
Hmm.
I know we always mention like we love supporting Asian authors, Asian American authors of all sorts. But I don't think we've ever really talked about ourselves. So, Julia, if you want to kick it off.
Right. And I just want to say for people who have never watched this on YouTube and have like not seen the video episodes of this podcast, like, yes, sorry, like we are Asian. So we're going to say that now. Like we are Asian and we are Asian American.
Yes.
So I am fully Chinese. Well, okay. If I'm going to be technical here, I'm technically half Chinese and I'm half Taiwanese. My father was Taiwanese and my mother is actually from Shanghai. So, language wise, I speak Mandarin. I don't know how to read or write, but I do speak and I can understand Shanghainese, but I do not understand Taiwanese. So, for those of you who are not necessarily familiar with like things like dialects or languages and stuff like that, like Shanghainese is a dialect of Mandarin in my opinion, because basically to me it sounds like cursive Mandarin. That's how I describe Shanghainese, and it's like an interesting thing. So
Mhm.
if we're explaining it in like American terms, I would say it's like having a southern accent. Like it's a different
Ah.
dialect, you know?
Mhm.
It's like I can talk like this, but if I add like twang to it, it becomes a
Mhm.
different dialect. Like that's how
Mhm.
I kind of imagine it. Um,
Mm.
but I guess fun facts about me was that when I was born, they actually shipped me back off to China. So I lived in China for a couple years, and that's where I learned Mandarin. And then
Mhm.
first grade, I came back to America, and I had forgotten all my English, and I was in ESL for like 5 years.
She was
And
an
now
ESL
I know I
girly.
was an ESL girly, guys. What's my English now? 1 out of 10. I need to know, because my Chinese is probably not that great. Um, anyways, I'm really really proud to be Chinese American. I love being Asian, like I really do, and I'm lucky because I grew up in a place where being Asian was honestly really normal. Like
Mhm.
all of my elementary school, my middle school, my high school was predominantly Asian, actually, or like at least half and half. Like we were
Mhm.
all, there was a lot of us who were Asian.
Mhm.
So I'm blessed in that term. And like I said, I love being Asian. I love supporting Asian authors. I'm a big advocate of like Asians and minorities and stuff like that. And so, yeah. What about you, Liz?
So I feel like I'm a little more of a difficult case because every time I say what I am, everyone's like, "Oh, that's that."
Just like Colin. Just like
Yeah.
Colin.
Yeah, I'll have to tell you guys that story in a
We
minute.
won't let him
But
live it down.
yeah. So, both of my parents are from Laos, and if well, I will say many people don't know where Laos is. It's actually the only landlocked country in Asia. And so it's right in between Vietnam and Thailand. And I will say our culture is closer to Thai than anything else, in Thai and Cambodia. And so I am Laotian American. Um, I grew up in the States. My parents migrated over when they were like 12, 13, when Viet Cong was taking over Laos and all of that. They got sponsored over by a church. And so they lived here. You know, they were in ESL and trying to live their best lives and all of that. So I am fluent in the language. I cannot read. I cannot write. If anyone has
Same.
ever seen Laotian letters, they're not actually letters, they're just sounds. And the sounds are represented by symbols that just look like a bunch of curly cues.
It's like fake tails, like.
It's like, and my mom's like always trying to tell me, like, you should try to learn. And let me tell you a story because um, I grew up in Illinois and we had a very small, tight knit Lao community. And every weekend we would go to the temple, and that's honestly where we made a lot of our friends. And they had a like Lao reading, writing, speaking class. Okay. Like it was school, like literally like Sunday school, pretty
That a lot
much.
of Vietnamese people have that too, like tu ni and stuff like that at their Catholic churches too.
Yeah. And so my cousin is so good. Like she can read and write. Like she picked it up really well. Me, on the other hand, yeah, I was GT, but not GT in Laos. Like I was really bad at it. So I will never forget the day. Like, mind you, I hate being bad at things. Like whether it's something I hate or something I like I just hate being bad at things.
Fair.
So I will never forget this day scarred me for like the rest of my life. But it was graduation and I already knew like I didn't do well, but like who announces grades at a
Yeah. Oh,
graduation? Okay.
shut up.
So they're saying all these names. They're like da da da, B, da da da, A, and they're like Elizabeth, F.
They even said F. But they still let you graduate though.
I'm screaming because they gave me a certificate that said an F on it. I immediately shredded and threw it away.
But they let you graduate. See,
They
but
did
you
let me
ate.
graduate.
And
I did.
F's get degrees, guys. Just
F
kidding. That's not.
F for fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, I cannot read, I cannot write, but the language is really difficult. Like I said, it's sounds. So like the way someone, let's just say something random like rose, like the way someone would say rose, they could be spelled like two to three different ways depending on what sounds you think rose would be
Mm,
spelled with.
I didn't know that.
Hmm. And funnier story, like that's also why some of my family, like my dad's family, our last names are spelled differently because they went
Mm,
phonetically.
interesting.
Yeah, so like My last name, like the part where it's Mani.
Yeah.
I have some cousins that is Many, and I have
Oh.
like the ending Khoth. I have
Mhm.
some that are my dad's is actually Khot, not Th. Yeah.
Interesting.
So it's a lot of different things, but like yeah. Anyways, aside from that, I also am in the same boat with you. I think it took me a longer time though to accept that I do like being Asian. Um, I unfortunately did not have the same experience as you, where you were surrounded by a lot of Asian
Right.
people and
I
all that
remember
stuff.
that.
Um, I grew up in Illinois, in a suburb of Chicago, and we had mainly a lot of Hispanics and African American students in my school. Even though we didn't have a
Hey, Colin, our special guest who didn't know what Laotian
and I'm
was.
about to tell y'all that story too.
Yes. You did that
But
to yourself, Colin, by showing up.
right. So it was a very small population of us already as it is, but I also went to specifically a gifted and talented school. And so I was already isolated in that factor as well. Whereas a lot of my other Asian peers went to a school called Kishwaukee, which was literally all Lao kids.
Mm,
So I didn't have that experience. And unfortunately, I experienced a lot of passive aggressiveness, a lot of racism, like, all that stuff. And I even told you, like, I think I experienced more of my culture, not experienced more of my culture. Let me take that back. I experienced more of, I guess, accepting the fact that I am Asian American in college.
right.
That really helped through our sorority and through all the other things. And even then, I kind of shied away from it because I don't think I ever really liked claiming the fact that I was Asian. And I know that sounds so bad, but just based on the environment that I was in, it was hard to.
Right.
And even now, like a lot of people don't know what I am. They'll assume and say like I'm Hawaiian, or
Right.
assume and say I'm like Filipino or anything like that. And when I was younger, I would be happy with those assumptions, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
Yeah.
And um, it took me a while, but I came around to it. And like, I love who I am. I love my culture. I love hearing the stories like with my parents and everything like that. And I don't mean to turn this to like a whole soap thing, but I also agree with you. I love being Asian. I love supporting other Asian people and other cultures and things like that. And so,
Yes. You have
onto
to
the
tell the
topic
story.
of Colin. Um, and I'm only telling this story because it's requested by
It's
Julia.
so funny.
And Colin's gonna hate us because he
Love you,
hates this
Colin.
story.
It's so funny though, guys. Like we laugh about it.
Yeah, so he's right here. He's already side eyeing me, so I have to take off one of my headphones so I can hear what he says. But basically, um, Colin and I met through Twitter, now known as X.
Is that really what it's known as now? I
Yeah.
haven't been on Twitter in years.
Yeah, there's no more blue bird. It's literally
Like it's just an X.
it's just a black X.
Wow, who took over? Okay, anyways, that's a different story. But yes, tell your
Didn't Elon
story.
Musk buy it?
Oh, I don't,
Right?
girl, I don't know.
Anyways, so Colin and I never knew each other in college. We went to the same college, by the way. Um, but he slid into my DMs, whoop de woo, all this stuff, and then he was like, "Oh," he was like, "I don't really know how to ask this, so like, what are you?" I said, "I'm just a girl." I'm just a girl in this world.
Accurate.
So he was like, no, but Dad, I was like, what are you? I was like, oh, I'm Laotian.
Here comes the best part.
He goes, so what Asian are you mixed with? And I was like, well, what do you mean? Because both of my parents are from Laos. Huh?
Okay. It's funny because like we're Asian, like if you know, you know. It's
Yeah.
just funny. Like but Colin like now though, Colin is so cultured. Like he knows more than I do.
He's 75% Laos.
He is. He really chopping it up.
Yeah, he loves our culture, loves our food. He loves Asian food in general. I mean, honestly, I thought he would get sick of it, but no, he and yeah, he thought I was mixed Latin and Asian, Laotian. I mean, I could
I
see
mean,
that.
fair. Very
Yeah,
good deductive reasoning from a Baylor grad. Like,
honestly,
shout out. But incorrect.
yeah, quite.
But it's funny. It's
Yeah.
funny.
So yeah, he's very immersed into the culture. Love that I have a partner that can do that, and he tries all of our food. And some stuff I'm even like, but he'll try everything.
Yeah,
So
and shout out to him for that. And I guess like speaking on the topic of food and stuff, I will say like there are things like in each culture that is customary and different and stuff like that.
hmm
Like for me, pork blood, and I think we've had this conversation. I
yes.
cannot do pork blood. Like I know even at Asian markets they'll sell the pork blood. It has always freaked me out ever since I was a kid. And for me,
Mm.
I won't do it. Like I can't do it. Like you can maybe slip it in the food and if you don't
hmm
tell me it'll be fine, but if I
hmm
see you cooking with it, if I see the tub, like it freaks me out.
Oh wow! I feel like in some of our dishes it is like a staple,
Right.
and I mean I grew up around it, eating it, all that stuff, and I could see that. Like I could see how it freaked people out and stuff. But
Yeah.
usually with him, like I don't try to preface him too much with what it is, or unless it's like something like even I won't eat, then I'll be like, hey,
Right. You're like, yeah.
But he's like really good about not being like, oh, that's disgusting or that's like weird or stuff like that. Sometimes he'll just be like, oh, I'll just pass, or like like he won't be,
Right.
you know.
He's not
But
rude
yeah.
about it. And
hmm
I will say, like, I love Asian food, guys. I'm always craving Asian food. It doesn't matter what kind. I'm literally always craving Asian food. And I love it. Like, I love it.
Korean food makes me want
Dude,
to. I like
I love
scream.
Korean.
Korean
Dude, the
food is
side
so good.
dishes for Korean foods, like, are you kidding me?
That's
But
insane.
I did want to loop around back to the language thing that you were talking about because Chinese, everyone says like it is one of the hardest languages to learn. And it really, honestly, truly is in terms of, in my opinion, the reading and the writing.
hmm
Because just similar to like what you said about how different things can be said about, with the different sounds and the different spellings, like Chinese
hmm
is very much like that. And I always give this example when I tell people why Chinese is difficult, and it's just with a single word. So if you have the word in pinging, which is like ma, if you say it like ma, that means mom. If you
hmm
say it like ma, that means it's a horse. If you say it like ma with like a down thing, that means like you're getting scolded. So the
Yeah.
same word and the same spellings with just a little different inflection means a completely different word.
Ours is the same. Ours is the
Yeah.
same way. And like I have to tell Colin cuz this one's really funny too. Um in and I in our language if I say like koi, like that means like me or like I or
Mhm.
whatever, but if you say koi, like that literally means dick.
Honestly, that sounded the same. Like the way
Exactly.
that you just said it, I like what?
Yeah, and it's I'm like, hey, you got to be careful when you say those things cuz say the wrong thing.
Oh.
you know?
Especially around like the elders. It's like, what
Yeah,
did you
he's
just
going to be
say?
like koi. I'm like, "Oh,
And I think that also, I think because like we're Asian, everything just makes sense to us, I think. And so I would like to take a segue into like a big thing about Asian culture and respect because okay, so let's just start with something simple, right? Like people always say stereotypical things like, oh, you never wear shoes in the house. Like if we're Asian, the shoes are coming off.
I
Like
don't care
we're
where
not,
I'm at."
yeah, we're not wearing the shoes in the house. It dirties the house. It's
It
like
freaks me
in
out.
and it feels like it feels like impurity to me. Like so yes, that is a true stereotype, but I just need to say that first because yes, that like we're like that. And honestly, I'm not bashing on anyone who doesn't do that. Like if you wear slippers in the house, great. But yeah, anyways. So a big thing about Asian culture is age. So, like, respecting your elders is very, very prominent. And that's not just with Chinese or like being Laotian, that's across every type of Asian culture you come across.
Yep.
Elders and stuff are like it's a very respectful thing. So,
Yep.
like if you have somebody who's like your grandma or someone who's like your older sister, you need to be respectful of them. Sometimes, yes, it could be kind of to a toxic fault, I will say, but that's just how Asian culture is rooted. So I think a
Mhm.
lot of times when we see things that are not like that, we're just like so confused because that's not what we grew up with.
Mhm. And I feel like a lot of the times too, I feel like there's like a newer generation of Asian Americans and stuff
Right.
where those cultures and traditions do die. And I'm not saying that to like everybody or like
Right.
it happens to, but like for example, like not that my brother doesn't respect his elders because he does. I think he has a different worldview than like
Hmm.
my generation or like my parents' generation, where he just doesn't understand the familial building of that. And
Right.
like I will say, growing up, my parents weren't really like affectionate. And I
Right.
feel like this is common in most Asian households where it's like their affection is giving you everything you need to be successful.
Exactly. Exactly. They don't say I love you, they don't give you
Hmm.
hugs. It's
Hmm.
the act of them providing for you is their
Hmm.
way of showing you love. And I completely agree with that.
And I will say, I think that was a downfall for me growing up because I felt like I sought validation and love from others. I remember vividly, like, I had a best friend in elementary school and going into middle school, and I like always envied her family. Like, they were always eating dinner together, like hanging out together, playing games together, hugging each other, loving each other. And like I feel like I always craved that from my parents, but I never received it. And again, I'm not saying that my parents neglected or didn't love me. I know
Right.
they did very much. But it was just a different form of love. And I feel like it hurt me later in the future because, especially in like, let's say like romantic relationships,
Hmm.
I feel like I depended a lot on past partners to fulfill those empty love gaps, if that makes
Yeah. No,
sense.
and that makes sense. I feel like that's a natural response. And I think a lot of Asian people can relate to that for sure.
Yeah, and I will say my parents weren't like tiger parents,
Hmm.
but they did have different expectations for me than they did like my brother.
Hmm.
Um, I was the firstborn. I'm a girl. Like I feel like I have a lot more to uphold and all of this than my brother did. Like for example, like in high school, I was involved in so many clubs and I went to football games and did X, Y, and Z,
And
all
you
of
were
the
playing
best.
sports, like,
But I had to be home at 9:30 and the games end at like 11.
right.
I would have to beg my parents to let me stay out that late and all of that. My brother, who had freshly started high school, would come home at like 2 in the morning and they'd be totally okay with that. His grades were not the best, and I mean, like it's just like it was two completely opposite lives that we both lived, and like he felt like he went through way more hardships than I did. I said I literally will fight you.
Right. And I think that's funny because like yeah, that is like a thing. Like I growing up, I was an only child, but then like I have half siblings. So seeing the difference in like how the oldest is treated versus how your youngest is treated is actually insane.
Yeah.
And for those that like Liz mentioned a tiger parent, like for those who don't know what a tiger more so it's like a tiger mom specifically,
Mhm.
like the best way to describe a tiger mom, I feel like, is just a very overbearing mom who expects you to be amazing at every single thing you do, but they're very aggressive about it.
Yeah.
Like, that's, I think, the best way to describe it. And you just have to kind of experience it and have one to really know what a tiger mom is
Hmm.
because there's no way to describe that kind of, yeah.
Yeah. That
So,
yeah. I don't know if I would ever be able to do that. I mean, I feel like my mom was a tiger mom in terms of like making me come home, but she wasn't like. I feel like my parents weren't overly involved in school stuff because, one, they didn't have time. Two, they didn't understand.
mhm,
Both my parents did graduate high school, but um, like by the slivers of their hair,
right.
it was really hard for them like with English and all of that stuff, and so they knew they couldn't help me in academics, but they did find resources for me to be able to be successful.
Right. And I think that at the end of the day, like that's all we could really ask for nowadays is a parent who supports you and cares about you, because now that we're older, I think we've had this conversation multiple times. Now that we're older, you view things differently in terms of your parents' actions. Like
Mhm.
now I recognize that what my parents did for me was all for my good, and they may have not shown physical affection or verbal affirmations and stuff like that, but looking back on it, they did show and provide me exactly what I needed to be where I am today. And I think
Right.
it's funny though, because I our childhood experience is really defined, because I like my love language, my number one, I hate physical touch. Like I hate physical touch. Anyone who knows me on this podcast listening knows how much I freaking hate when people touch me. I'm like, oh God.
Mhm.
Um, but my number one love language is always words of affirmation, which is something that like I never received.
Mhm.
And I'm big on words of affirmation. I'm always telling people I appreciate them, I care about them, like stuff like
Mhm.
that. And then I thought about it the other day and I was like, is that trauma response?
Right?
I
Am
know.
I trauma bonding to you
Yeah.
or yeah, no,
So
I'm definitely with you on that. I feel like it's hard to and I feel like I'm kind of opposite of you. Um because I didn't get physical touch. I think I want that more, especially for
yeah,
my partner.
right.
And so I feel like I don't know, it's tricky. The whole thing is just tricky.
I know. And it's we all respond to it differently, but I think
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I feel like all the Asian Americans who kind of grew up like that, they can all relate to what we're talking about. It's kind of
Yeah.
like a if you know, you know type of
Yeah.
thing.
And it's
Um
like going back to what you said too, it's like your parents not giving you words of affirmation. It's like you come home with like an A minus and they're like, why no A plus?
Yeah,
Like
literally. And people, people like make fun of that, but no, like it's true, guys. Like if you, because they always want you to do better. And I think a lot of it stems from the fact that when you're an immigrant parent, it's not just being Asian, right? Like any immigrant parent who comes to America in hopes of having kids here, like having your children fulfill dreams and then having their
Mhm.
dreams of their own, they had to work harder. They
Yeah.
had to earn these things.
Yeah.
So when you don't show the best of your abilities or what they think is the best of your abilities, they get mad at you or they think that you
Mhm.
can do better, but that's just how they were raised and how they were taught to survive.
Definitely, because my dad, I remember we had a conversation and he was like, I don't push you because like I hate you or like whatever the case is. I push you so you're not like, and this is not to like shit on anybody who works in a factory or anything like that. But in the terms of my dad, like he was like, I don't want you working some factory job or some bullshit job, pretty much. And
Right.
again, not saying that a factory job is a bullshit job, but he doesn't want me to be like, he wants me to be my own leader in a sense.
Right. And he wants you to fulfill your dreams. And that's what
Mhm.
ultimately I think all of our parents moved to America for, was to reach like an American dream to be able to give us what we want to do. And now that we're older and stuff, I can confidently say that I'm like, okay, I'm actually really grateful that my parents had pushed me, because I had I feel like I grew up and I was never like, I was always really self-motivated, and I still think that that's what I carry with me anywhere I go, whether it's a job, like applying for school, applying for whatever, studying, like I always give 120% of my best
Mhm.
abilities, and I'm so grateful that my parents pushed me to be better.
Agreed. I think we have learned many lessons from them, and I feel like it's it's nice to hear like all of the things that has have brought them here, like all the struggles that they went through, all of the things that they did to kind of like provide for us and to keep us afloat and stuff like that. And I feel like as kids, like you don't really recognize all the things that your parents go through, right?
Mhm.
Because your parents don't tell you they're financially struggling. Your parents
Right.
don't tell you that, oh, we were late on a bill, or your parents don't tell
Mhm.
you that we barely afforded groceries for the week or anything like that. And you live like in that ignorance, like in that
Right.
bliss. You
Right,
live in that,
exactly.
and you don't realize like all the things that your parents do to provide for you. And I'm not saying just for Asian people, I'm saying for all people across the board. Like your parents will never tell you like if they're struggling or if they're struggling mentally, if they're struggling, like financially or anything like that. And I think it is something that we do need to be more grateful for and more appreciative of, because even if we don't understand most of the time, most cases say that, even if we don't understand the road that our parents are taking us on, I feel like that does lead to one ultimate purpose at some point.
Right. And I absolutely agree with that. And I think with that being said, you guys have learned a lot about us, our vulnerabilities, all that stuff when it comes to being an Asian American. But like we said, we are super happy of our culture and we love being Asian American. We love promoting these type of things. So because of that, with AAPI month, be expecting a month full of amazing books, amazing authors. On TikTok, we'll be suggesting hopefully like a book every day for the month of a different author or a different book, whatever it may be, and just be expecting a lot of content because this month really does mean a lot to us and we will full heartedly dive into it to the best of our abilities. Yay. So thank you guys so much. Bye, y'all.
Bye.